Welcome to our deep dive today,
Okay.
where we're tackling a challenge. I'm sure many of you face building robust, risk-based decision-making
Right.
from scratch.
Yeah.
We've got a mix of sources to guide us.
Okay.
Implementation guides, academic papers,
Mm-hmm.
even real-world case studies.
Sounds good.
Our goal, to
Yeah.
give you practical steps
Practical stuff.
to make risk management a core part of your organization's DNA,
Okay.
not just a box-ticking exercise.
Yeah. It's fascinating how many organizations treat risk management as a compliance hurdle
Really?
rather than a tool to make better decisions.
It's like they're stuck in what one guide calls Risk Management 1, focused on satisfying external stakeholders instead of actually informing decisions.
That's RM1 in a nutshell.
Is it really?
Policies, frameworks, those massive risk registers that look impressive,
Right.
but rarely influence day-to-day choices.
And the scary part is a course handout for chief risk officers
Wow.
claims that most companies are still in this RM1 rut. They're missing out on what the guide calls Risk Management 2,
Mm-hmm.
empowering internal decision makers with risk insights.
Yeah, it's a huge missed opportunity.
It is.
Only about 10% of companies have even started their RM2 journey, according to that same handout.
10%.
Imagine the competitive edge organizations could gain if they truly embraced risk-informed decision-making.
So where do we begin if we want to break free from RM1
Okay.
and build something that actually works?
It starts with understanding what risk really is.
Okay.
A lot of traditional approaches oversimplify it, focusing on standalone risks as static points on a matrix.
Right, like those risk matrices we see everywhere.
Yeah.
We've got this research paper aptly titled
Yeah.
The Risk of Using Risk Matrices.
All right.
And it really dives into the problems with those colorful grids.
They often create a false sense of precision,
Yeah.
leading to arbitrary decisions.
Okay,
The paper highlights how they can incorrectly prioritize risks,
interesting.
showing two risks with the same score on the matrix.
Despite one having a much larger potential impact.
And don't even get me started on how you define those probability and impact categories.
Right.
The same risk can end up in completely different boxes, just
Right.
based on how you define high or medium impact.
Exactly.
It's like comparing apples and oranges.
What's fascinating is that the paper also points out something called risk acceptance inconsistency.
Interesting.
You can have a situation where a yellow risk actually has a higher expected loss than a red one,
Wow.
but the matrix doesn't capture that nuance.
So if those matrices are so flawed,
Okay,
what's the alternative?
right.
How do we actually think about risk in a way that's useful?
One guide suggests we need to shift our thinking from standalone risks
Okay.
to their effect on our objectives.
Okay.
They use this interesting analogy.
Okay.
Measuring a standalone risk is like measuring X,
Mm-hmm.
but what really matters is measuring its effect on your business goals,
Okay.
which they call FX.
They give a great example using financial risk.
Calculating the market risk is like finding X,
Yeah.
but understanding how that market risk impacts your net present value, that's your FX. That's what truly matters to decision makers.
Precise.
It's not just what's the risk,
No.
but how does this risk affect what we're trying to achieve?
Exactly.
That's the key to moving beyond RM1
Yeah.
and towards a more robust approach.
Yeah.
So instead of getting bogged down in risk matrices,
Right.
we need to integrate risk analysis into the heart of our decision-making processes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A guide focused on risk identification for board decisions argues that we need to embed risk analysis into every significant decision,
Every decision.
not just rely on annual risk updates.
But how do we actually do that? So I'm going to talk about things like budgeting, investment decisions, all those crucial areas where things can go wrong.
Several guides offer practical advice.
Okay.
One suggests updating existing policies and procedures
Right.
to include risk analysis steps. Instead of having a separate risk management framework, they argue that it should be woven into the fabric of how your organization operates.
I like how one guide put it.
Mm-hmm.
Risk management should be everyone's responsibility,
Right.
not just the risk manager's job.
Exactly.
It's about building a risk-aware culture.
They use an example of an investment company that incorporated its risk methodology directly into its investment management procedure.
Okay,
No separate document, no extra steps,
got it.
just integrated risk analysis into the core process.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
But can we use the same risk analysis approach for every decision?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
A guide on risk culture actually argues against a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
They emphasize the need for tailored risk methodologies
Okay.
based on the type of decision being made.
So the way you analyze risk for a major capital investment will be different from how you approach risk
Right.
in, say, a marketing campaign.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
The tools you use, the data you consider, the level of detail you need, it all needs to be tailored to the context.
One of the guides even suggests taking immediate action by updating job descriptions
Okay.
to include risk responsibilities.
Okay.
So instead of having a risk manager who's siloed off,
Yeah.
you're integrating risk management into everyone's role.
That's a powerful way to start shifting the culture.
It is.
But to really take things to the next level,
Okay.
we need to talk about something that often gets overlooked.
Okay, what's that?
Quantitative risk analysis.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The part where we bring in the numbers and move beyond gut feelings?
Right.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Quantitative risk analysis allows us to move beyond those subjective opinions and gut feelings.
Okay.
And really use data to make more informed decisions.
Right.
Several sources highlight the success stories where using quantitative risk analysis led to significant cost savings or strategic improvements.
We're talking real-world results here.
Absolutely.
Not just theoretical benefits.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific examples that really stood out to you?
Absolutely. There's a case study in a guide on insurance risk management that really showcases the power of this approach.
Okay.
It's about a company that used quantitative risk analysis to completely overhaul their insurance program and save millions of dollars.
Wow, millions.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
It is.
What were they doing differently?
They started by challenging the assumption that their existing insurance coverage was optimal.
Okay.
They had a hunch they were over-insuring for some risks and under-insuring for others,
Okay.
which was costing them a fortune.
So they decided to take a more data-driven approach.
Exactly. They dug deep into their historical losses, claims data, and industry benchmarks to build a quantitative model of their risk exposure. This allowed them to estimate the likelihood and potential severity of different types of losses with much more precision.
That makes sense. But how did they use this information?
Okay, so
To actually negotiate better insurance terms?
they did something really smart. Instead of relying on their insurance brokers to present their risk profile to underwriters, they decided to create their own detailed submission document.
Interesting.
It was over 40 pages long and packed with data, analysis, and insights into their specific risks.
I can imagine some people thinking that's overkill.
Right.
But it obviously paid off.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
By demonstrating a deep understanding of their own risks and a commitment to proactive risk management, they were able to negotiate significantly lower premiums.
Really?
While actually increasing their coverage limits.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It shows that sometimes the best way to manage risk is to be your own best advocate.
Exactly.
And use data to back up your arguments.
Precisely.
No.
Now let's shift gears a bit
and
talk about how quantitative risk analysis can be used to stress test strategic plans. There's another fantastic case study in a handout for chief risk officers about a private equity firm that was developing a new business plan with ambitious investment goals.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
What were they trying to achieve with quantitative risk analysis?
They had developed a detailed financial model that projected significant profits and cash flow growth over the next 5 years. But they knew that their model was based on a number of assumptions.
Right.
And they wanted to understand how sensitive their projections were to changes in those assumptions.
So they wanted to see what would happen if things didn't go exactly according to plan.
Exactly. They also wanted to explore the potential impact of external factors that were outside of their control, like interest rates, currency fluctuations, and changes in market demand.
Right.
They realized their initial model was showing a smooth path to profitability, but the real world is rarely that predictable. So how did they use quantitative analysis to address this?
Yeah, how did they?
They engaged a team of risk analysts to conduct a Monte Carlo simulation. This involves building a probabilistic model that captures the uncertainty in their key assumptions and external factors. By running thousands of simulations, they were able to generate a range of possible outcomes for their investment plan.
That sounds like a powerful way to explore different scenarios.
It is.
What did they learn from the simulation results?
The simulations revealed a much more volatile picture
Okay.
than their initial model had shown.
Wow.
There was a significant chance that they could face cash flow shortages,
Okay.
miss their investment targets, and
No.
even experience losses in certain scenarios.
That was even a wake-up call for them.
It was. They realized that their original plan was too risky
Yeah.
and that they needed to adjust their assumptions and investment strategy
Okay.
to reduce their exposure to uncertainty.
So how did they use the simulation results to actually make changes to their plan?
They were able to identify the key drivers of risk in their plan
Okay.
and develop mitigation strategies to address those risks.
Okay.
For example, they decided to diversify their portfolio,
Yeah.
stage their investments over time,
Uh-huh.
and build in more contingency planning.
This case study really highlights how quantitative risk analysis
Yeah.
can help you make more robust and resilient plans, even when faced with uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now let's talk about some specific tools and techniques that
Okay.
our listeners can use to start implementing quantitative risk analysis.
Okay.
One of our sources recommends a tool called a loss exceedance curve.
Loss exceedance curve.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a graph that shows the probability of exceeding different loss thresholds for a particular risk.
Okay.
It's a visual way to understand the potential severity of a risk
Okay.
and make more informed decisions about how much risk you're willing to accept.
Can you give an example of how this would work in practice?
Sure, let's say you're concerned about the risk of cyber attacks.
Okay.
You can use a loss exceedance curve to estimate the probability of experiencing a cyber attack that costs your organization more than $1 million,
Uh-huh.
$5 million,
Okay.
or even $10 million.
So by looking at this curve,
Right,
you can get a sense of the potential financial impact of a cyber attack
exactly.
and decide whether you need to invest in additional cybersecurity measures, purchase cyber insurance,
Yeah.
or take other steps to mitigate the risk.
Exactly. It helps you make more informed decisions about how to allocate your resources
Okay.
and manage your risk exposure.
That makes sense.
Another tool that's particularly useful for analyzing complex decisions
Okay.
with multiple stages and uncertainties
Mm-hmm.
is a decision tree.
I've heard of decision trees,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I fully understand how they work.
Can you explain?
A decision tree is basically a visual representation of a decision problem.
Okay.
It shows the different choices you can make.
The potential outcomes of each choice
Okay.
and the probabilities associated with those outcomes.
That sounds helpful. Can you walk us through an example?
Let's say you're considering investing in a new product line.
Okay.
A decision tree can help you map out the different stages of the investment, from
Right.
research and development
Uh-huh.
to production and marketing.
Okay.
At each stage,
Mm-hmm.
you can identify the key uncertainties,
Okay.
estimate the probabilities of different outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
and calculate the potential financial impact of each decision.
So by analyzing the decision tree,
Right.
you can see the potential risks and rewards of each path
Exactly.
and make a more informed decision about whether to proceed with the investment.
Exactly. It helps you weigh the pros and cons of different options
Okay.
and choose the path that has the highest expected value,
Mm-hmm.
taking into account both the potential upside and the potential downside.
That's a powerful tool.
It is.
Are there any other quantitative risk analysis techniques that our listeners should be aware of?
In today's data-driven world,
Yeah.
we can't ignore the potential of artificial intelligence, or
Well,
AI.
AI for risk management.
Yeah.
That sounds futuristic. Tell me more.
While AI is still relatively new to the field of risk management, it has the potential to revolutionize how we approach risk.
Okay.
For example, AI algorithms can scan vast amounts of data from news articles,
Mhm.
social media, and
Mhm.
other sources to identify emerging risks that humans might miss.
So AI can help us stay ahead of the curve and anticipate potential threats
Exactly.
before they materialize.
AI can also be used to analyze risk scenarios and run complex simulations to assess the potential impact of different risks on your business objectives.
Okay.
And it can even help automate many of the routine tasks involved in risk assessments.
So it can really streamline things.
Yes.
Freeing up risk managers
Yeah,
to focus on more strategic issues.
exactly.
This is all very exciting.
Yeah.
But are there any potential downsides to using AI for risk management?
Of course, as with any new technology,
Right.
we need to be mindful of the limitations of AI.
Correct.
AI models are only as good as the data they are trained on,
Right.
and they can sometimes produce biased or inaccurate results.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's crucial to use AI responsibly and always apply human judgment and expertise.
So it's not about replacing human risk managers with robots,
Right.
but rather about using AI to augment human capabilities
Exactly.
and make us more effective at managing risk.
Precisely, the key is to find the right balance between human expertise and AI-powered insights.
Makes sense.
Now, shifting our focus to another important area,
Okay.
we need to discuss how we communicate about risk within our organizations.
You're right. Even with the best quantitative analysis,
Yeah,
it won't do much good if we can't effectively communicate our findings to
exactly.
decision makers.
To the people who need to know.
What are some key considerations when it comes to risk reporting?
One guide emphasizes the importance of avoiding jargon and focusing on the impact of risk on business objectives.
Okay.
It's not about overwhelming people with technical details,
Right.
but rather about telling a story that resonates with their goals and priorities.
That makes sense. Can you give us an example of how to do that effectively?
Instead of simply reporting a list of risks,
Okay.
you can frame the conversation around the probability of achieving specific strategic objectives.
Right.
For example, instead of saying, we've identified a high risk of supply chain disruption,
Right.
you could say,
Okay.
there's a 30% chance that we'll miss our revenue target
Okay.
due to potential supply chain disruption.
Ah, that's much more impactful.
Right.
By connecting the risk to a specific business goal
Exactly.
and quantifying the potential impact,
Yeah.
you're more likely to get the attention of decision makers.
It makes the conversation more concrete and actionable.
It does.
It helps them understand the potential consequences of inaction and motivates them to take steps to mitigate those risks.
So how do we ensure that risk is consistently considered
Okay.
as part of the decision-making process,
Yeah.
especially at the board level?
One source suggests modifying presentation templates
Okay.
to include a risk section for every significant decision.
Interesting.
This way, risk is always on the agenda and not just an afterthought.
That's a simple but effective way to embed risk into the decision-making culture.
It is.
It sends a clear message that risk management is everyone's responsibility
Exactly.
and that it should be considered upfront,
Yes.
not just when things go wrong.
Right. And finally, we can't forget the importance of transparency
Okay.
when it comes to risk reporting.
Okay.
One of the guides encourages organizations to disclose their risk management approach,
Okay.
key risks, and mitigation strategies to external stakeholders, where completely appropriate.
Transparency builds trust and
Yeah.
shows that you're taking risk management seriously.
Exactly.
It also allows stakeholders to make more informed decisions about their involvement with your organization.
Yeah, precisely by being open and honest about the risks you face.
Right.
You demonstrate your commitment to responsible decision-making and accountability.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion.
It has.
We've covered a lot of ground,
Yes, we have.
from debunking the myth of the risk matrix
Right.
to exploring the power of quantitative risk analysis
Yeah,
and the importance of a risk-aware culture.
absolutely.
But I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear about even more specific examples and tools
Yeah.
that they can put into practice.
Absolutely. In the final part of this deep dive,
Okay.
we'll delve into inspiring success stories,
Okay.
practical techniques, and cutting-edge tools to help you build truly robust risk management within your organization.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into building robust risk management.
Okay.
We've talked about the need for quantitative analysis,
Right?
a risk-aware culture,
Yes.
and clear communication.
Yep.
Now, let's
Yeah.
get into the nitty-gritty,
Yeah.
real-world examples and tools you can actually use.
It's one thing to talk about concepts,
Right.
but seeing them in action is what really brings it home.
And our sources are full of those aha moments.
Yeah.
I was particularly struck by the case study of that company who used quantitative risk analysis to revamp their entire insurance program.
That one from the Insurance Risk Management Guide.
Yeah.
It's a classic example of how data can challenge assumptions
Right.
and save serious money.
Millions of dollars.
They were spending millions on premiums,
Yeah.
but suspected they weren't getting the best value.
So they decided to stop relying on their brokers
Right.
and figure out their own risk profile.
Yeah.
Seems bold.
They dove into their loss history claims data,
Mm-hmm.
even industry benchmarks to create a quantitative model.
Yeah.
This allowed them to estimate the likelihood and severity of different types of losses
Yeah.
far more accurately than the generic assumptions insurers often use.
But how did they use this to their advantage? Did they just show up to their insurer with a spreadsheet
Well,
and demand lower rates?
they went a step further.
Okay.
They put together a comprehensive submission document
Right.
over 40 pages,
Pages.
packed with data,
Wow.
analysis, and insights into their specific risks.
Okay.
They basically became their own risk experts.
And that actually works.
Mhm.
I'd imagine some insurers would be put off by that level of detail.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But the results speak for themselves.
What happened?
By showcasing their deep understanding of their own risks
Okay.
and a commitment to proactive management,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to negotiate significantly lower premiums
Really?
while actually increasing their coverage.
That's incredible.
It is.
It's like taking control of the narrative
Exactly.
instead of letting others define your risk for you.
It's about being proactive, not reactive.
Right.
And this applies beyond insurance.
Okay.
Another great case study. This one, from a chief risk officer course handout,
Okay.
involves a private equity firm using quantitative analysis to stress test their strategic plan.
Oh, the one with the ambitious investment goals.
Yes.
What were they concerned about specifically?
They had this detailed financial model
Okay.
projecting great profits over the next 5 years,
Right.
but they knew it was based on assumptions, and the world rarely follows a neat plan.
So they wanted to see what could throw them off course.
Precisely, they wanted to understand the impact of things like interest rates,
Right.
currency swings,
Hmm.
changes in market demand,
Right. All those external factors?
factors outside their control.
Yeah.
So they used a technique called Monte Carlo simulation.
That sounds complex.
It is, but
Yeah.
what does it involve?
Yeah. What does it involve?
It's about building a model that captures the uncertainty
Okay.
in your key assumptions and external factors.
Okay.
Then you run thousands of simulations,
Thousands.
each with slightly different variations, to see the range of possible outcomes.
So instead of just one most likely scenario,
Right.
they got a spectrum from best case to worst case.
Exactly. And this revealed a much more volatile picture
Really?
than their initial model had shown.
Wow.
There was a real chance of cash flow shortages,
Uh-oh.
missed targets,
Okay.
even losses in some scenarios.
That's scary.
It was a wake-up call.
But a valuable one, it sounds like.
It was.
What did they do with this information?
They used it to make their plan more robust.
Okay. How?
They diversified their portfolio,
Okay.
staged investments over time, and
Yeah.
built in more contingency planning,
Smart.
all based on the insights from those simulations.
It's like they went from hoping for the best
Uh-huh.
to preparing for a range of possibilities.
Exactly. And this proactive approach is key to building a truly risk-aware organization.
Absolutely.
But where do we start if we want to implement these kinds of techniques?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, but our sources, luckily, give us some practical starting points.
Okay, good.
One mentions a tool called a loss exceedance curve.
Loss exceedance curve.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I have heard of it, but
Right.
remind me what that's all about.
It's a visual way to understand the potential severity of a risk.
Okay.
Imagine a graph that shows you the probability
Okay.
of different loss thresholds being exceeded.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're worried about cyber attacks,
You could see the likelihood of an attack costing you over $1 million,
Yes.
$5 million, and so on.
exactly.
That's way more concrete than just saying cyber attacks are bad.
Right. It helps you decide how much risk you're comfortable with
Right.
and what actions to take,
Okay.
whether it's investing in security, buying
Mhm.
insurance,
Yeah.
or adjusting your operations.
Another tool one source recommends is the decision tree.
Yes.
I've heard the term.
Have you?
But how does it actually help with risk-based decisions?
It's great for complex choices with multiple stages and uncertainties. Imagine a branching diagram
Okay.
where each branch represents a different decision path and its potential outcomes.
So if you're thinking of investing in a new product line, for example.
Exactly. You'd
Yeah.
map out the stages,
Yeah.
research development, production, marketing,
Right.
and identify the key uncertainties at each stage.
Okay.
Then you estimate the probabilities of different outcomes
Mm-hmm.
and their financial impact.
So you're not just guessing at the best path.
Right.
You're actually considering the risks and rewards of each option.
Precisely. It helps you make a more rational,
Okay.
data-driven decision,
Right.
taking into account both the potential upside and downside.
All of this makes sense.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder about the role of technology in all of this.
Okay.
I mean, with all the advancements in AI,
Right.
where does that fit into the risk management landscape?
That's a great point. One of our guides actually dives into the potential of AI,
Okay.
particularly models like ChatGPT, to augment the risk management process.
I'm all ears. What kinds of applications are we talking about?
Well, imagine using AI to scan vast amounts of data
Right.
from news articles,
Mm-hmm.
social media, and other sources to identify emerging risks that human analysts might miss.
So like an early warning system for potential threats.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And AI can go beyond just identifying risks.
Okay.
It can analyze complex scenarios,
Okay.
run simulations to assess the impact of different risks,
Mm.
and even automate routine tasks and risk assessments.
That frees up human risk managers to focus on the bigger picture.
Right.
Okay.
But we need to be cautious.
Okay.
One source reminds us that AI models are only as good as the data they're trained on.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
Right.
And they can be prone to bias.
So it's not about replacing human judgment,
Mm.
but rather using AI as a tool to enhance their capabilities.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot where human expertise and AI insights work together to create a more robust and adaptable risk management approach.
This deep dive has been a fantastic journey.
It has.
We've explored the limitations of traditional risk management, discovered the power of quantitative analysis, and even glimpsed into the future of AI-powered risk management.
Absolutely.
What are some key takeaways
Okay, so
you hope our listeners will walk away with?
first and foremost, risk management isn't about following rules or checking boxes. It's about changing mindsets, embracing uncertainty, and making informed decisions to drive better outcomes.
And it's a continuous journey,
It is.
not a destination.
Right.
There's always more to learn,
Yeah.
new tools to explore, and new challenges to overcome.
Absolutely.
But by embracing the principles we've discussed, data-driven analysis,
Yes.
a risk-aware culture,
Uh-huh.
and clear communication,
Yeah.
you can build a more resilient and successful organization.
Absolutely. It's about empowering individuals and organizations to navigate a complex and uncertain world
Yes.
with confidence and foresight.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
I hope so too.
We'll be back soon with another exploration into a fascinating topic.
Sounds good.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep asking those tough questions.
Absolutely.